This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, exploding head syndrome. A name that grabs you, but what does it mean?
In my mind, I'm picturing shelves falling, books falling onto children. I mean, it was just, I don't know what it was because it was a loud crash.
Exploding head syndrome. Not as bad as it sounds when Radio Health Journal continues.
Medicare open enrollment is underway, and millions of older Americans are evaluating their options to ensure their health plan meets their retirement lifestyle. Silver Sneakers, the nation's leading community fitness program designed specifically for older Americans, is helping people stay active and do more of what they love by improving their physical and mental health through fitness, fun, and friends. No matter your goals, from running a marathon for the first time to keeping up with your grandchildren, Silver Sneakers can help you live your best life. In fact, 91% of members say Silver Sneakers has improved their quality of life. Offered as a free benefit through leading Medicare plans, Silver Sneakers members have free access to all the amenities of a basic membership at more than 13,000 fitness and wellness facilities nationwide, as well as specialized group exercise classes led by certified instructors. Medicare open enrollment ends December 7th. Check your Medicare plan to see if you have the Silver Sneakers benefit. Learn more and see if you're eligible at silversneakers.com.
The range of maladies people may suffer is incredibly wide, from minor inconveniences to life-threatening. But when someone says they experience something called exploding head syndrome, you might imagine a scene from a Stephen King novel. It's not as scary as its name may suggest, but exploding head syndrome is a real disorder, and it can be problematic.
Sound asleep, middle of the night, all of a sudden there's this huge crashing sound that I hear. And I was totally positive that something had fallen in the kids' bedroom. In my mind, I'm picturing shelves falling, books falling onto children. I mean, it was just, I don't know what it was because it was a loud crash.
That's Walter Mishka, a health blogger who has experienced exploding head syndrome.
I bolted up in bed and grabbed the flashlight I have, and I started sneaking around the upstairs trying to find what had fallen because it was a loud crash. Couldn't find anything, so I thought, I'll wait till the morning, see what happened. Kids seemed okay, so I just went back to bed. And in the morning, there was nothing. Nothing fell, nothing had happened. I had no idea what it was.
And that is exploding head syndrome. Just when you're falling asleep, you hear a loud crash or banging noise that startles you awake, and you swear you heard it. You get up to investigate, but eventually realize it was all in your head. The name of the syndrome is obviously colorful, but Mishka isn't so sure that's a good thing.
It kind of almost trivializes it, the name. It kind of makes it sound silly or like a weird sci-fi movie or something. It is a little disconcerting when you have it, when your head explodes in the middle of the night. I kind of feel like it should have a better name, but it hasn't come around to that yet.
But Dr. Brian Sharpless says the name is what everyone remembers. Sharpless is assistant professor of psychology at Washington State University and author of the book Sleep Paralysis.
It's certainly a dramatic name, and it was coined by an English psychiatrist by the name of J.M.S. Peirce. If you go through the literature, it's been called various things, and they've all been fairly dramatic. So in the 1920s, it was called a snapping of the brain. And if you go back to Silas Ware Mitchell's original descriptions in 1876, he called them sensory discharges. So it's certainly an attention grabber.
So yes, the name is unusual, but Sharpless says exploding head syndrome is more widespread than most people think.
I was able to find some descriptions of it going back as early as 1876. There's been so little research on it, we really don't know if it's increasing or decreasing. The clinical lore said that it was essentially a rare disorder that only occurred in people over the age of 50. So in order to test that out, I interviewed, along with my grad students, over 200 people using a clinical interview I developed. And what we found was it actually wasn't rare. We found it in 13.5% of the sample, with much higher rates if you suffer from another sleep disorder called isolated sleep paralysis. So it didn't seem to be rare in a sample of relatively young students.
Exploding head syndrome isn't physically harmful, as its name may imply, so some doctors dismiss it. But Sharpless warns that the psychological effects can take a heavy toll.
By themselves, these episodes are harmless if they are truly exploding head syndrome. By definition, you can't have any more than a mild sensation of pain during the events. If you're having significant pain during it, you should probably definitely get a check out. So where it becomes a problem is in how people respond to it. So I've seen cases of people that experience it 5 to 7 times a night. So you can imagine that causes quite a bit of sleep disruption. And it can be associated with a lot of fear. People might think there's something really wrong with them. They might be having subarachnoid hemorrhages. They might be having all sorts of things going on. They might actually try to avoid going to sleep or start having feared responses even when going into their bedroom.
For them, anxiety can lead to sleepless nights and dead tired days. For others, exploding head syndrome really is no big deal. Doctors don't know what triggers the perception of exploding sounds, but Sharpless says it seems to be related to sleep paralysis, where a person wakes up temporarily unable to speak or move.
As with any relatively understudied phenomenon, there are a lot of theories out there. The one that I think makes the most sense is that you have a part of your brainstem called the reticular formation. One of the things it's responsible for is shutting down your body as you go to sleep. So what it'll do is kind of like a computer shutting down. It'll start inhibiting your visual neurons, your motor neurons. What we think happens in exploding head syndrome is that instead of shutting your auditory neurons down, what it does is makes them fire all at once. And that's why you get this really massive, loud, undifferentiated noise. It may be related to sleep paralysis for the same part of the brain, because in sleep paralysis, the reticular formation actually inhibits your motor neurons, which is normal during REM sleep. But when it happens when you're awake, as it does in sleep paralysis, it's pretty scary too.
Since exploding head syndrome is not completely understood, Sharpless says that doctors have few treatment options. For patients who are disrupted by it, specialists have prescribed several different drugs, but results are mixed.
Certain psychotropic drugs might be helpful. Particular types of antidepressants, in a small number of cases, have been shown to be useful. The anticonvulsant drug called topiramate, which is brand named Topamax, has been reported to not reduce the frequency of the episodes, but what it does, it turns the volume down, so it's less distressing when they happen. But probably the easiest thing to do to help people is just to educate them about it and reassure them that it's not a dangerous phenomenon. It's just a strange sort of misfiring in your brain. But if it is causing you problems, or if it is associated with pain, you should certainly go to a doc to check it out. And you should look for a sleep specialist who has experience with what are called parasomnias, which is the class of disorders that exploding head syndrome is in.
Luckily for Mishka, his exploding head syndrome was one of those harmless cases. After a few occurrences, it just sort of went away. He says if he were to give advice to someone experiencing the same things, he'd keep it simple.
Obviously, tell them you're not crazy, and I don't think it's debilitating. From what I've read, it's not dangerous in any way. To me, I kind of just roll with it.
Though the name suggests otherwise, exploding head syndrome is a manageable condition for most sufferers. For the unfortunate few, though, every night seems noisy and exhausting. Dr. Brian Sharpless invites listeners to check his website at briansharpless.com. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns with medical notes in just a moment.
Each year, thousands of adults in the United States get sick, are hospitalized, and some even die from diseases that could be prevented by vaccines. People with heart disease or those who've suffered strokes are at high risk for serious problems as a result of these illnesses, like the flu or pneumonia. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says if you have heart disease or had a stroke, it's especially important to talk with your doctor about getting your vaccinations up to date. Heart disease makes it harder for you to fight off certain diseases. In fact, some vaccine-preventable diseases like the flu can increase the risk of another heart attack. Vaccines are one of the safest and more effective ways to protect your health, and the influenza and pneumococcal vaccines are especially important to people with heart disease or stroke. So don't wait. Vaccinate. Talk to your doctor to get your vaccinations up to date. For more information, visit cdc.gov/vaccines/heart. That's cdc.gov/vaccines/heart.
Medical notes this week. Breast cancer death rates have plummeted over the last 25 years, with better treatment and early detection getting the credit. A report in the journal Breast Cancer Facts and Figures finds that between 1989 and 2015, the breast cancer mortality rate dropped by 39%, saving more than 320,000 lives that previously would have been lost. Despite that, disparities exist. The breast cancer death rate among black women is still nearly 40% higher than for whites. Detecting concussions on the football or soccer field has always been difficult, but an experimental smartphone app could help. It's called Pupil Screen, and it uses a phone's video camera to detect changes in the eye's response to light. A report presented to UBAComp 2017 shows that Pupil Screen can quantify changes that are imperceptible to the human eye, enabling a correct concussion diagnosis with almost perfect accuracy. Scientists hope to create a commercial version of the app within 2 years. Automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, are designed to be used by untrained members of the public to save the lives of people having a cardiac arrest. But a new study in the European Heart Journal shows that many people are reluctant to use an AED in public places because they fear they'd hurt the person rather than help them. Many members of the public also wouldn't know where to look for an AED if a person nearby suffered a cardiac arrest. Last month, we reported on the FDA's plan to make vaping more attractive than cigarettes to smokers. Now, a study in the journal Tobacco Control predicts that as many as 6.5 million smokers could make the switch to e-cigarettes over the next 10 years, giving those smokers an aggregate 86 million additional years of life. Researchers say even a pessimistic prediction finds that nearly 2 million smokers could make the switch to safer e-cigarettes, saving more than 20 million years of life. And finally, doctors often advise people to get a flu shot, but they should also probably tell you to try to be happy when you get it. A study in the journal Brain, Behavior, and Immunity finds that a positive mood when getting a flu shot improves blood levels of anti-flu antibodies better than any other factor measured, including stress, sleep, and diet. And that's Medical Notes this week.
Thank you for listening to Radio Health Journal, a production of MediaTrax Communications. If you enjoyed this week's show, please leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. You can find more Radio Health Journal stories about health, science, and technology on iTunes, Stitcher, and at radiohealthjournal.net.